Now you will notice that in the first part, after you put in your name, I've got some steps that these are test taking strategies. So today we're not just going to talk about like, hey, what's the answer to this question? That's part of it, yes. But the bigger thing I want to practice with you guys are working on just using common sense. I'm going to prove it to you that these questions can be solved most of the time with just common sense if you know just a little bit. You don't have to be an expert. You just have to know one thing. And if you can remember one thing about this topic, that particular topic, common sense will tell you the answer. And the question most of the time has the answer hidden in it. You just have to be able to recognize it. We're going to practice on that today. I'm going to prove that to you. So I want you to read the last sentence first, like we always do. If it's a complicated question, simplify the question. If you still don't know it, rule out two choices, narrow it down to two that might be right. Use the clues from the question, which are the secret words that are hidden in there. The answer might be hidden in the question. And then if all else fails and you still don't know, pick B or C. Statistically, that is the right answer most of the time. Now, let's start with this first one. We're going to read the last sentence first. Which statement describes what will most likely occur in the rabbit population due to the introduction of the predator? Even if you don't know anything about the predator, you know that if a rabbit's going to avoid being eaten, it's got to do what? It's got to run away, right? So if you go back and read, it does tell you that there's a new predator that's been introduced and it runs faster than the native predators of rabbits. Okay, so rabbits aren't used to having something chase after them that's this fast. So what's going to happen? Let's rule out two. Which ones can we rule out because they just don't make sense? A, the rabbits will mutate their genes and express genes and increase their speed. You cannot just pick and choose when you have a mutation or what genes you express. That's not how your DNA works. Your DNA controls you, not the other way around. Slower rabbits will develop stronger legs and pass this trait on to their offspring. Can you pass on strong legs to your offspring if you develop them during your lifetime? No. So B, we can throw out B. So it's either C or D. Now, will rabbits mate and produce offspring with a different species? Is that even possible? Can you make offspring with a different species? That's not possible, right? That's why you're a different species. If you could mate and have babies, you wouldn't be different species. You'd be the same species. So obviously, the only thing left is D. Faster rabbits will survive and reproduce, increasing the average speed of the rabbit population. You'll notice I have hints up here at the top. The hint for this one was only the strong or most fit survive. That's the same thing. If only the fastest rabbits will survive, and they'll pass on their fast genes to their babies, and their babies will be fast. And then each generation that goes by, they'll get a little bit faster, a little bit faster. How would you know? Well, you don't necessarily have a fast, but there's slight variations in the offspring. So if you have 10 brothers and sisters, some of you are going to be faster than others. So that slight advantage in speed might give you an edge to where you live longer and you're able to reproduce with more mates than your slower brothers and sisters who got 8 a long time ago. Okay. I'm going to try to get quick. Which answer choice best describes the community? Now, you'll see that I have a link. Click on the link. It's going to open this up here. You remember my terrible song, Same Population, Different Community? You remember that? So a population is a group of the same organisms, like a herd of bison. They're all the same. And community is different species living together, like not just the bison, but the bison, hawk, snake, prairie dog, grass, all those things together. That is community. So just all you have to know one thing about this topic, which is same population, different community. Can you remember that? Same population, different community. So which one is different? Which one is talking about different species living together? Is it F, G, H, or J? H, correct. Different species of lizards occupying the same ditch in the desert. F, G, and J, they all have same species living together. That's not a community, that's a population. Okay, here's a very good example of just using common sense to answer a question that might be otherwise difficult. Check this out. Which components bond with adenine in a section of double-stranded DNA? Do you guys know what adenine is? Adenine is the A in GCAT. You remember how DNA is made up of GCAT, GCAT? The 4 bases that make up DNA are GCAT. So G pairs with C, A pairs with T, right? G and C go together, A and T go together. So when you see DNA, just remember GCAT. Those are the 4 bases. A goes with T. The question is, which components bond with adenine, or the A in GCAT, in a section of double-stranded DNA? What does A always pair with? A always pairs with T. Which one of these is the T? Thymine, good. Thymine is the T in GCAT, so adenine always pairs with thymine. So because we know that the answer is going to include thymine, sorry, I accidentally clicked it. I don't want to give you a free answer. Because we know that the answer is going to include thymine, we can rule out all answer choices that don't include the number 5. Which ones can we rule out? C and D, right? We can rule out C and D, so it's either A or B. What's the difference between A and B? In terms of the numbers that are included. B says 3 and 5. A says 1, 3, 5, and 6. What numbers does A have that B doesn't? 6 and 1. So by using logic, we know that if either 1 or 6 is one of the things that pairs with A, then we know that that's the answer. But if not, then B is the answer, right? You're probably thinking, well, A only bonds with one thing. It only bonds with T. But in DNA, it's not just like A and T are it. There's something, T is on one side of A. It's like if you have 2 hands. And Quentin, you're reaching out and you're holding hands with Walter, but you're also, your other hand is holding hands with Harmony. Okay, so yes, Quentin and Walter always go together, but on the other side of Quentin, if Quentin is the A in GCAT, then on the other side of Quentin, he's also got something attached to him on the other side, which is Harmony. Quentin. Now, here's the thing. Let's look at A and B. What is number 1? 1 says phosphate. You might not know what phosphate is. If not, guess what? That's okay. Go to 6. What does 6 say? Adenine, right? Does adenine pair with adenine? No, A does not pair with A. A pairs with T. So we can rule out A because adenine does not pair with adenine. So it's not A, which means it can only be B, 3 and 5 only. So again, we didn't have to be an expert. We just had to use common sense. All you have to remember for that is that G always pairs with C and A always pairs with T. If plants aren't around, they can no longer do this, is the hint. What would be the most likely effect of a wildfire that burned a large area of forest? Forest is made up of trees. A fire burns down the trees. Now there's no trees. Correct. It is H. We knew that one right away. Less carbon dioxide would be removed from the atmosphere because plants breathe in carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and take it into their bodies. Which 4 body systems interact to allow a person to sneeze? You'll see a link here. You'll see a link to the body systems overview. Now, these are all the body systems that we talked about. However, you're not going to be asked about all of them on the test. I feel like you know most of these already, even if you don't like to admit it. You know that the muscular system is muscles. You know that the skeletal system is bones. You know digestive is your stomach. You know that nervous is your brain. You know that circulatory or cardiovascular is your heart. Urinary is peeing, right? Is your bladder and stuff. Respiratory is lungs. Lookman. Reproductive, you know what that is. I feel like the only three that you're going to be confused on is integumentary, lymphatic, endocrine. If you can remember lymph nodes, you only have to remember the difference between these two: hair, skin, and nails, glands, and hormones. Now, going back, we can get rid of which ones? Which ones can we get rid of? Because we know that there's a system in here that has nothing to do with sneezing. Sneezing is blowing air really fast out of your mouth and nose. It is A. Tell me why. Mm-hmm. Correct. But also, look at this. Another way, if you didn't know all that, if you didn't know what all those four systems did, you might know that skeletal has nothing to do with sneezing. B, C, and D all mention skeletal. So we know that's not it. This one should be easy. Which cell that was viewed is most likely a prokaryote? Remember, there's only two types of cells, prokaryote and eukaryote, or what I call pro and euc. Remember, pro means no, euc means nuke. Remember that. Pro means no, euc means nuke. Pro has no nucleus, euc has the nucleus. Which cell is a prokaryote? Or in other words, which cell does not have a nucleus? Cell X. Correct. Cell X has no nucleus. So it is a pro. Pro means no. No nucleus. You guys remember the dichotomous key? How to work one of these? You start at number 1 and you just follow the steps until you're done. It's pretty simple. But here's the tricky part about this question. They don't give you the information for number 1. Number 1 is body is long and narrow or is not long and narrow, but they don't tell you about the body. All they tell you is that the fish have eyes located on the side of the head. So we got to start there. Where is that mentioned? Where they have eyes on the side of their head? Is that step 1, 2, 3, 4? What is it? We did. We've done several. These are actual STAAR test questions from last year. The final answer, yes. Yeah, but I'm asking, where do we start with the eyes on the side of the head for the purpose of making this video? 3B, okay? So we go to, what do? We go to 5, right? Because the fish has eyes on the side of the head. We go to 5, body is spotted or not spotted. Is the body spotted or no? It says is not spotted. So not spotted means that we do what? Go to 7. 7 is stripes or no stripes. It doesn't tell us, but what we have done now is we have at least narrowed it down. We know that if it doesn't have stripes, it's a glassy sweeper. If it does have stripes, it's going to be either one of these two. So we've narrowed it down to 3 total possibilities. There's only one answer choice that mentions where both fish in that answer choice are from this total possible list of 3. That's why A, glassy sweeper and squirrelfish, is the correct answer, because it's the only one that includes 2 fish out of this possible list of 3. Okay, here's your hint. DNA is GCat, RNA is GCal. Remember, RNA is the same, except it has a U instead of a T, right? Everything else stays the same, except there's a U instead of a T. Which answer choice correctly describes the model of RNA being transcribed? First of all, is RNA complementary to DNA, or is it an exact copy of DNA? In other words, you remember how when we rewrite DNA as RNA, we rewrite the G, we don't rewrite it as G, we rewrite it as the thing that goes with G, which is its complement. What goes with G? C. So DNA is like the original copy of a book. RNA is like when you make a photocopy of it, when you put the page down and you make a copy of it. The only difference is that it doesn't make an exact copy. So when you copy DNA, it's not going to go G to G. It's going to go G to C. It's going to go to the thing that goes with G. C is going to go to G. A is going to be rewritten as, what will A be rewritten as? We're rewriting it into RNA form. There is no T in RNA. Remember, what is there instead? There's a U, correct. Remember that. When we rewrite T, we're not going to rewrite it as T, we're going to rewrite it as the complement to T, which is A. A. Okay? So A still exists in RNA. All right. So it's not H and J we can rule out because H says that it's an exact copy of DNA. So does J. It's not an exact copy, it's the complement. Okay? So what do you think it is out of F or G? G, the RNA strand is complementary to DNA, but uracil instead of thymine is paired with adenine. Correct. U pairs with A instead of T pairing with A. Correct. G. All you have to remember is DNA is GCat, RNA is GCow. If you can remember that, you have a very good shot. Okay, here's another link. This is a good example of why you just need to skip to the end, because everything before this last sentence is all junk. You don't need to know it. It's just a distraction. The question is, what is a result of preventing spindle fibers from forming? So what are spindle fibers? They are these blue lines right here. What is their job? What do they do? Well, they reach out, they grab the DNA, and they pull the DNA, half the DNA to this side, and this other one pulls the other half to that side. Why are they doing this? Because we're eventually going to put half on one side, half on the other, split it down the middle, and then have two separate cells. Now, if there are no spindle fibers, there's nothing to reach out and grab this DNA and pull it to the sides. So anaphase can't happen. The cells will still line up, the chromosomes will still line up in the middle, but they will not be pulled apart toward opposite ends. Therefore, if we have no spindle fibers, we cannot pull them away. Ana means away. No spindle fibers means no away, means no anaphase. Which one says no anaphase? Yep, C. I'm just going to start slowly zooming in on the answer. It is C. Can't go to anaphase. All right, this is a question you've had before. Actually, a lot of these questions you've had before. I don't know if you recognize it or not, but these are actual questions from the last STAAR test, and you've seen most of them in your daily assignments. Which question should the students investigate to classify the organism correctly? Well, what are we doing? Some think it's a plant, others think it's a fungus. They found this thing. They don't know if it's a plant or a fungus. What question should they ask to see which one it is? What is something that plants do that fungi don't?
Photosynthesis.
Yes, photosynthesis. Good. So plants can do photosynthesis. So if we say, can it do photosynthesis, and it does, then it's a plant. If it doesn't, it's a fungi. So what's the answer?
G.
Correct. G. Very good. Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing. I'm happy. That just made my day. All right. So this is another example of where the answer to the question is in the question. It's just hidden and you have to find it. The question doesn't, if it gives you information, it's either giving you information because it wants you to know it or because it's useless. Either way, it's helpful. Let's find out. What does this question tell you about the San Marcos salamander? It tells you it's light reddish brown. It tells you it's about 2 to 5 centimeters long, and it tells you it lives in Spring Lake and a portion of this river. Okay, Now, why do you think it told you those random facts about the salamander? It wants you to know those things. However, are there any answer choices that have anything to do with the salamander being light reddish brown, the color of the salamander, or the length of the salamander? Because the question is, which human activity would most likely decrease the ability of salamanders to survive? In other words, what human activity is bad for salamanders? Regarding their color, their length, or where they live. I see no answer choices that talk about color or length, do you? So it must be something about where they live. What do humans do that's bad for where salamanders live, which is the lake and the river? Reducing the number of automobiles contributing to pollution, that's a good thing. We're not looking for a good thing, we're looking for a bad thing. Tourism that helps fund educational programs, that's a good thing. Addition of a new food source that limits, that's a good thing. There's only one bad thing listed here. Increasing water consumption that decreases the flow of clean water. That's a bad thing. All right, you should remember this. We just talked about this. No, I don't think. There might be some species that are, but I'm not aware of any. All right. Okay, so here we go. You guys remember this question? The horse one? Hopefully you know the answer already. Horses develop slowly over time. That's an easy one. I feel like I don't have to go over that one. Oh, here's another thing. Remember, you know how H and J are technically true? These are true statements. H and J are both true, but that's not the answer to the question. Why? Because you only, here's another tip, another test taking tip, only pick answers that mention things that are mentioned in the picture or the diagram. There's no mention of common ancestry or rapid embryo development. So even though both of those things are true, they're not mentioned in the picture, so you don't pick them, okay? So that's another little tip that you can use to help you narrow down your answer choices. All right, what are we looking at here? It says it at the top. It is a virus, right? How many parts of the virus are labeled? 2. Viruses are like a piñata. There's an outer covering and then there's stuff inside. The outer covering is the capsid, the stuff inside is DNA. Now, how is that similar to a nuclear membrane? What's a nuclear membrane? What does nuclear mean? It means nucleus, right, Walter? What is the membrane of the nucleus? What does it do? Remember, the membrane is the outer covering. Correct. The nuclear membrane is an outer covering that surrounds the DNA in your cell. The capsid is a membrane that surrounds the DNA and virus. They both surround and protect the DNA. The answer is C. Both protect genetic information for the structures. DNA is genetic information. It's the same thing. All right, here's another link. I think you're right, but let me explain this part first. Okay, so we haven't talked about enzymes in a while, but enzymes are like a lock and a key. The enzyme is the lock, the substrate is the key. If the key does not fit into the lock, nothing happens. If the substrate does not fit into the enzyme, nothing happens. You see how the pieces fit? What happens if I change the shape of the enzyme? Will this piece fit anymore? No, so the enzyme will not be able to do anything to the substrate, what we call the substrate. What is the most likely result if the shape of the enzyme changes? Will the substrate change its shape to match the enzyme? No. The key will not change its shape to match the lock. The enzyme will no longer be able to catalyze a reaction with the substrate? Correct. The enzyme will no longer be able to act on the substrate because the lock does not fit the key now. Okay, here's your hint. ATP is energy. ATP and energy are the same thing. If I say ATP, what do I mean? Yes. I was looking for energy, but yes, you skipped a step ahead. But yes, it is active transport. There's only two types of transport. There's either active or passive. Now, there's different types of active and different types of passive, but they're all either active or passive. The difference between active and passive transport is active requires energy, passive does not. When you see ATP, what do you think of? Harmony? What is ATP? So when you see ATP, you see energy. When you see energy, you think active or passive? Active. Good. So what's the answer? Active transport, because energy is being used. All right, look at this lemur. Isn't he weird looking? Yep. So the lemur has a really long middle finger. This is an adaptation that the lemur has evolved over time. The question literally tells you the answer in this one. Look at the question. It says the lemur uses its specialized finger to reach the insect larvae and remove it. What do you think they're going to do with those larvae, those insects? They're going to eat it. These middle fingers are used for getting and finding food. What selective pressure has most likely resulted in the development of this middle finger? They literally tell you it's to find food. It's J. Food sources that are hard to find. How easy is that? You don't have to be an expert on evolution. You just have to use common sense. All right, here's another link. There's Punnett Squares. You guys remember what a Punnett Square is? Remember, we got mom's 2 genes, dad's 2 genes. You can get 1 gene from mom and 1 gene from dad. If you get a little g from mom and a big G from dad, you're going to be big G, little g, and you'll be green. Little g from mom, big G from dad, big G, little g, you'll be green. Or little g, little g, little g, little g. My point is that what goes in the squares is the letter that, or letters that's above it, and the letters that are to the left of it. Okay? So what is the probability of albinism in the offspring of a cross between these 2 organisms? What 2 letters do you need to have in order to be albino? Albino means AA, little a, right? Where will there be a little a from mom and a little a from dad? Well, this is mom's, and this is, or vice versa, it doesn't matter, but dad's here. So, right, so, good. So, this square, just follow and see where these 2 intersect. I wish I had, I could draw a line, but I can't. Just imagine I'm drawing a line straight down. Every square, 1, 2, 3, 4, all 4 of these squares are going to have a little a and a big B in it. Okay? All 4 of these squares are going to have a little a and a big B. So, but we don't care about the B's. We're only looking for A's. So all these squares will have little A's. All these squares will have little A's. All these will have little A's. All these will have little A's. So where do the 2 lines intersect? The top lines and the left lines. Where do they intersect at? These 4 in the bottom right. 1, 2, 3, 4. So these 4 squares will have little a from mom, little a from dad. 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 4 out of 16. That's the chance that the kid will be albino. Easy, right? You just got to remember it's just worked like a times table, okay? Yep, and we're almost done. Okay, gibberellins. You don't have to know what gibberellins are, but how are they able to affect other parts of the plant? Oh, we got to go back and read more now. They're hormones that are produced in the roots of plants. The plant uses these hormones to stimulate the growth of shoots. Roots are below ground, shoots are above ground. How does stuff get from the roots below ground to the shoots above ground? There's a tissue in plants that moves stuff from one place to another. It's the same tissue that moves stuff in your body from one place to another. Yes. Another name for our circulatory, part of our circulatory system is vascular tissue. That's like when people say, you're looking vascular, bro, like you work out, your veins are popping out. You ever heard that? Okay. So vascular is veins. That's how stuff gets transported around in your body. So which answer choice says that plants' vascular systems move the gibberellins, which are just hormones, from one part of the plant to another? Look for the word vascular. That's the key word here. Yes, it is. It is G. They're transported through vascular tissue to other parts of the plant. All right, here's a hint. Pyruvate is glucose. It's the same thing, so glucose and oxygen. Hint number 2, the mitochondria is the what of the cell? The powerhouse of the cell. And when we say power, we're talking about energy. But what 3-letter molecule did we just talk about earlier is the same as energy? Harmony. What 3-letter molecule is the same molecule as energy? Very good. ATP, yes. So what does the mitochondria make? It makes power. What's power? Energy. What's energy? ATP. Exactly. All right, last one. You guys remember food webs, how they work. The arrow points toward the what? Toward the eater. So the grasshopper is pointing and saying, hey, he eats me. This is the guy that eats me. Ants do the same thing. Hey, that's who eats me. They're pointing toward their eaters. Now, if the horned lizards, if they go down, if their numbers go down, then which species in the food web are going to go up in population? Yes. But yeah, there should be an arrow from the snake to the hawk, but there's not. But if the horned lizards, if their numbers go down, then will the numbers of the things that they eat go down too, or will they go up? They'll go up, right? So the question is, which 2 organisms will likely increase? Correct. Grasshoppers and ants. Very good. Yeah, let me pause this. Let me stop this recording.